The next thing we will do is start adding footage and music to our 1080p edit sequence. So let's go to our project panel window. You can see that we are working inside this project panel window because it's highlighted in blue. If we would work down here, now it's blue, this is blue. This is very important. Sometimes when you're not in the right panel window and you're trying to do something, it will not work. So, okay, now we have selected this panel window. We can go into footage. Let's make it a little larger. Now we can click this one, or this one, and this one, let's say, and we will click and hold and drag them down. Now, all of these files do not have audio, so on the video V1, this is where I've placed them. And because there's no audio files, no audio has been added. If you imported a clip that does have audio, when you drag it down, you will also be adding audio. Okay, so now let's go to music, and just like the same thing, we can actually remove that. Okay, so let's use the song Discover. We will click and drag it, and you can see because in our preferences we set it up as bring all audio in as mono, it has taken this stereo track and split it up into two mono tracks. It still sounds and works exactly the same, but now we can easily, if we wanted, hold Alt or Option and click and just get one of them if we wanted. But together, without holding Alt or Option, we can select both channels at once because they are joined together. If we right click, we can go to unlink if we want them separate. Okay, so let's bring our files down right to the beginning of our timeline, right at 0. Okay, so now that we have audio, if we scrub, you'll hear the song. Okay, so depending on how fast you scrub through it, that's how fast it will play the audio. If you want to just play it in real time, then you hit spacebar or come up to our program window and hit play. You will also notice that now we see the footage because it's in our timeline on video track 1 and the eyeball is on. If we turn the eyeball off, then we no longer can see it. Let's go to the beginning of our timeline and hit play. Okay, let's go a little further so we can see a cut. This is just clicking and dragging this timeline cursor, or we can simply click where we want it to show up. So for now, we'll place it right there. We'll hit play again. Okay, and that is the basics of creating an edit. We have music, and we have 3 video clips playing one after another, and together it makes the video much more interesting because we have music in our edit. Okay, let's go back up to our footage folder. Now, if we want to just have this, we can close it here. Let's click and hold, and we'll highlight all 3 of those clips, and then we can press delete on our keyboard and remove those. Those do not delete from your hard drive or from your project window. Those only get removed from your timeline sequence. Okay, so let's add all of our clips into our footage by clicking and holding all of them, or we can simply click and drag the footage folder and it'll bring all of them in. We have now placed all our footage one after another into our sequence. Let's click and drag and delete all of those. And again, that only deletes the clips from the sequence. They still exist up here. In this lesson, we will talk about the different layers inside Premiere Pro in your sequence. Right now we have a bunch of clips in a row, as well as one song that is showing up as 2 mono tracks. We have this line here, which separates our video tracks from our audio tracks, and we have our master audio, which is all of the audio tracks being fed to a stereo track, which is our master. The master track audio is represented here on the right side when we play back in our sequence. So let's bring our timeline cursor to the beginning. We have on video track 1, this is selected as blue. We can enable all of the tracks if we want, or just keep this one selected. This is important when you're copying and pasting clips into your edit, because if this is just selected, then when you copy, Command C, let's say over to here, it'll paste it on that track because that's what's highlighted. If it's V3 and V1 isn't selected, and you Command V paste the footage, then it gets pasted to the top. So for example, let's highlight those and delete them. If we wanted this clip, Command C to copy it. If we wanted that to show up right here, then we can go to V2, and then it pastes it on that track above this track. In video editing, your top layer, much like Photoshop or After Effects or any other editing program, your top layer is the layer that is seen, and anything below it will be hidden by the item above it. So for example, this clip here is on top of these clips, so what we see is this clip. If we were to turn that clip off, so we can't see it, then we see now what's below it. So once again, if we turn now this layer off, then we have nothing because both layers are turned off. If we turn this one on, we see this layer, and because this is above it, if we turn it on, then we see this layer. And the same thing goes with right here. We have this layer, which is above this next clip. So if we were to turn this one off, we see this clip below it. Now, the same thing works with as many layers as you want to go. So if we, for example, want to take this clip and click and drag it and place it right there, then now we see this clip. If we hide it, we see this clip. If we hide that clip, we see this. It's all stacked, and whatever's on the top is what we see. So let's turn those back on. In our edit, we now have 3 clips. It'll play from here to here, and then it'll start playing this clip from here to here, and then it'll start playing this clip from here to here. Then there will be a black spot here, and then it'll play again. So to show you what that does, let's click there, play it. Okay, so now you can understand kind of if there's no clip, then you're not going to see anything. And if there's clips on top, it'll change to the next clip that is seen. Okay, so let's take this clip. We can move it back into the spot, and this is a duplicate, so we will delete it. Okay, so the next thing is audio. Now in the layer system of the audio tracks, it does not work the same in the sense of if there's an audio clip here, and another one under it, it'll only have this one heard. In the audio sections below the video, any audio clip that is present will be heard. For example, if we take a different music track, let's try this one, we'll click and hold, and we will drag it down here, which means it's going to create a new track by itself. So now we have 4 audio tracks, A1 through A4, and we have video tracks 1 through 3. So now that we have this song on A1 and A2, we have this song on A3 and A4. Now you're going to hear 2 songs at once, even though this one's above it. So in other words, in the audio sections, it acts differently than the video. In the video, the top layer will only be seen, but because it's audio, you'll hear everything, even if it's stacked. So let's delete that. And that is a basic understanding of the layer systems. If we wanted to add more tracks, we can simply click and bring it up and let go, and then it'll add another track automatically. Or we can right click, add tracks or delete tracks. And in this one, we have video tracks, add one. We do not want to add any audio tracks, so I'll click and drag that or change it to 0. And we want to add, let's say, 4 video tracks. And it'll be placed after video 4, meaning right here. So now we have V5, 6, 7. And if we scroll up on the right side here, we can see the 8th track that it created. In a previous lesson, I was talking about the horizontal scroll in the preferences window, which is right here. If you set this to vertical, you can use the scroll on your mouse to go up and down. However, I find it much easier to use that function as the horizontal scroll, because let's just change it back. Because when you zoom in, which is the plus on your keyboard, and it'll zoom in right to where your cursor is. So if we're zoomed in very far here to make fine edits, it's nice to be able to use the scroll wheel to scroll along to wherever you'd like to edit. It makes things a lot faster. Let's press the minus on our keyboard a few times to go all the way back out. Another way to zoom is by clicking the bottom here and holding and stretching it to where you want it to be. Okay, in this lesson, we will talk about the playback resolution quality and why it's important to understand it. Now, there's two things. We have our exported final video quality, which should be as high as possible, and we have our playback, which is our preview resolution quality. This is represented in this area right here, which is select playback resolution. This is all dependent on what footage you're working on and how powerful your system is. If you're working with a newer system with a lot of memory and a lot of processing power, then you might be able to get away with using full, which will change the resolution and quality when you're editing. However, if you have an older system or if you're working on a less powerful laptop, then I would suggest keeping it at a quarter. At a quarter resolution, it still is very easy to see what's going on, and it actually doesn't make that much of a difference. So I tend to always just keep it at a quarter. From what I can tell, I don't see any difference between half and full. So to save some processing power, even on a powerful system, it might make sense to just keep it on half. So for our purposes, we'll keep it on a quarter always. Sometimes when you have text created in your project, the resolution of the text while you're editing doesn't look that great. If you don't like the way it looks, you can always improve the quality. However, then you will need more processing power on a stronger system. In this lesson, we will talk about picking selects or choosing selects, and we will talk about what that is and why it's important. Okay, so let's open our footage folder. And if we double click on one of these clips in our project window, it'll open up the preview of it in our source panel. Now this is different than our main editing program monitor. In our program monitor, it's black right now because we have nothing in our timeline. But in our source panel, this represents clips that we have selected in our project panel window. For example, if we double click on another clip, it changes here, but this is still black because there's nothing down here. Same thing with music. If we were to double click on this clip, it shows our stereo song that we have imported. Okay, so let's go to this clip, for example. Now, the idea in editing is not every piece of footage that you film will be perfect. So the idea of choosing selects means that you will be selecting the best clips you have so that in your sequence, in your edit, you are working with only the best of the best. You're not going to be confused by parts of your footage that are at the beginning or the end that are not useful. And once you can organize and kind of filter out all of the unwanted parts of your footage, you'll be left with just your selects. Okay, so to start picking selects, we can do a few different things. My workflow is I typically create another sequence. So we'll go File, New, Sequence. We will create another 1080p sequence because we are working with 1080p footage. We will call the sequence name all footage. We will go to OK. And then inside here, we will drag down all of our footage. Then we have our original sequence, which is our edit. In our edit will be where we place all of our selects that we collected from our footage, all footage sequence. In other words, as we are going through and watching all of these, if there's parts of the clips that we don't like, we will make a cut in the clip, and then we will only copy over the good parts that we want in our actual edit. So let's get started with that. So let's zoom in a bit. We have our footage folder selected and our timeline highlighted in blue. We can click on the plus on our keyboard a few times until we're as close as we want. We can hit the space bar. And it looks like around, I'd say there, when this part starts to be coming closer to the right side of the screen, that's where I'd like to start on this clip. So we don't want anything on the left to be brought over to our edit. So we need to make a cut point to split this clip into two clips. So how we do that is we need our cut tool or our razor tool. Depending on the version you are in, it might be called cut. So if we go over here to our tools section, we see our razor tool here, which has the keyboard command of C. So we can either click that, and then we can see that we have a different cursor type. If we go back to our original one, now we have the original cursor. Or if we press C on our keyboard, it changes it to the razor tool as well. So if we click on the clip in this spot, it will cut the footage in that area. Now we can do it as many different cuts as we want, and basically that's how you cut footage. Let's Command Z to undo those. Just leaving the one. We'll press V, which is our selection tool, to bring back our original cursor. Now we will zoom out just a bit, and now we will play, and we are looking for the end of the clip. So that's good for that. I'm just kind of picking it randomly here just for the purposes of what we're learning here. So let's go C, cut there, go back to V, click there, and now we're going to copy it. So we can either right click and go to copy, or we can, while it's selected, press Command C. Then we go over to our edit, and because this is at the beginning of our timeline and we have V1 selected, it'll paste right here. So we can press Command V, or we can simply paste the item. Now we can paste as many times as we want because it's a copied item, so we could, if we wanted the same clip back to back, we can do that. We don't want that, however, so we will delete those 4. And then if we watch this back, we can see the trimmed clip that we brought over from the all footage sequence that is now part of our selected clips. So now let's go back to all footage. Let's continue going through this. That's the same clip, so we don't want any of that. Let's scroll over. We'll click and drag on the timeline cursor to scrub through the clips, or we can simply press play and watch it in real time. Sometimes it's a little faster to just scroll through to quickly find a spot in the clip, so whatever works for you. So I think this section is fine, so what we'll do is we'll press C, we'll cut there, and we will Command C, and because the timeline cursor is at the end now, we can copy and paste it into this section. If your cursor was here and you tried to paste it, for example, it will trim the clip where you paste it, which is not what we want. So if you have moved the timeline cursor and it's not at the end, you can simply press the down arrow on your key to go to the end, or the up arrow key if you want to go to the beginning. So for us, we want to paste this after this clip, so we'll press the down arrow. That'll bring us to the end of this clip, our next edit point, and we will press Command V. And now we have this clip, which turns into this clip. Now, the idea for selects is we would go through all of our footage. It takes a little bit of time, but it ends up being a lot more organized, and this is a very non-destructive way of editing because all of your footage still exists on this sequence and can be referenced at any time. If you were to only edit with your footage here, you could go back and bring all your footage back again, but then every single time you need to get an extra clip, you'd have to go back to your footage folder, open up a new sequence, or drag all this stuff down into this sequence at the very end. And it's just a lot more efficient if you have all of your footage here. As I said before, this is what's known as non-destructive editing. So once we have all of our selects picked, I'll just do this quickly. Pick this one, copy it over. And the more you do this, the faster you will get. So I like the reveal kind of right there. And I like it until it shows that. So we'll copy it. Okay, I like the reveal of the background past the green leaves. We take that clip from there to right there. We can copy it over. We'll take that one from right there. Command C, Command V. We'll go to the C tool and cut it, and then take it to right there, select it, Command C, Command V. Sometimes, as you'll notice, it'll autosave by itself every 5 minutes. I like the beginning of that, so we'll take that clip. And we'll end with the wide shot, revealing the whole tree. Command C, Command V. Okay, so in our all footage sequence, you can see that when we move the timeline cursor, this number changes. Because we have our footage set to at the very beginning, wherever we move this will tell you how long this duration is. So right now it's 3 minutes, 4 seconds, and 7 frames. You'll notice that our selects are only 57 seconds. So we've trimmed about 2 minutes off of all our footage, and now we have our selects, which is a lot more organized. It's a lot more efficient this way because now we're only working in our edit with this footage. So when we start making creative decisions on when the next clip will show, it makes it a lot easier than having to, on every single clip at this point, delete the parts we don't want. In this lesson, we will talk about utilizing the source panel window. To start, let's go into the project panel window, double click on one of the clips. This will open up the source panel window. Using the timeline cursor in the source panel window, we can scrub through and watch this clip, or we can play it. We can use the different buttons below, such as add a marker, to place a marker on this clip that's separate from in the timeline where we can also add markers. We can select our in and out points. We can go to the in, go to the out, or move one frame at a time. At the end here we have export frame. This is how to save a picture from inside Premiere Pro. And then we can name it, choose a format such as JPEG or PNG, choose the path where it's going to be saved, and whether or not we want to import it into the project. Click OK, and then this image will be saved to your computer. Okay, so what we can do is go to the beginning and scrub through the clip, and I like that as the starting point. So we can either hit this button here, or press I on our keyboard to mark the in point. You'll notice that now the in point starts here. Then we can click play or scrub through. And I like that as the out point, maybe a couple frames earlier. Then we can either click this to mark the out point or click O on our keyboard. Once we've marked our in and out point, we can click anywhere on the image and hold, and then drag down into the timeline, such as, and it'll bring just the in and out portion that we've selected, and we can click and drop it on any layer we want. Let's delete that. Or we can simply bring down the drag video only, and then it's the exact same result. If this footage did have audio attached to it, then we can choose to simply just bring the video portion alone, just the audio portion, or if we do here, it'll bring both. There are a couple other options which are a little more advanced, but basically you can insert or overwrite footage into your timeline directly, such as my timeline cursor exists right here in the middle of this clip. So with our in and out selected, if we were to insert it, you can see that it placed the clip in the middle of those two clips. It actually cut it and inserted in between. The other option is the overwrite feature. With our in and out selected, if we press this button, depending on where our timeline cursor is in our edit, it will place the clip that we've selected and remove any part after this section for the duration of this clip. For example, our timeline cursor used to be right here, and we used to have the second portion of the clip here. However, overwriting the clip deleted what used to be there and pasted the new portion. The source panel window is just another way of selecting clips and bringing them into your timeline. I tend to use the all footage method of choosing my selects. However, a lot of editors choose to highlight their clips in the source panel, choose their selects from here, and drag them into their edit. Either one works. Another thing you'll notice in the source panel as well as the program monitor, that there is an area here that says fit. This is the select zoom level of this window. So for example, if we go into source, select here, and go to 150%, it will zoom in on our footage. And we can use the scrolling areas to move around in the clip. Let's go back to fit. The same thing works within our program monitor for any footage that we have down here. So let's go to this clip here, fit, change that to 400%, and then it zooms in quite a bit and we can move around and see where we need to go. Let's set that back to fit. You can also see a representation that our timecode cursor is at 2616, which is the same here. Those two numbers represent the same thing. This number on the right side is the total duration of all the footage or content we have in our edit. Okay, in the next lesson we will go over some basic editing such as trimming and moving clips around. Okay, welcome back. So in this one we will go over trimming clips and moving clips around. Right now we have several clips in our timeline, and if we press the plus tool on our keyboard we can zoom in, and if we click the timeline cursor and drag it to the beginning, we have one clip here. If we click the down arrow, it'll bring us to the next edit point, and so on. If we click the up arrow, it'll go backwards and do the exact same thing, change to the different edit point. If we select this clip, for example, we can click and hold it and move it to wherever we'd like. We can take this clip, move it up there if we want, take this clip, move it here. We can highlight all of these clips and move it around, and we can basically move them anywhere we'd like at any point in time, and it'll create a completely different result with the order of the clips, just as quick as that. The next thing we can do is further trim the clips depending on if the edit calls for it. For example, if we have a song that calls for faster edits, meaning it's more upbeat, it's a faster song, then the video portion might want to have faster edits. Okay, so we'll go into the music folder. We will double click on Discover. That opens it up into the source panel window. We can click play. And that is a slower part of the song, so if we look in the waveform, we can see a much louder part. So let's go to the second half here to maybe right there. We'll make our in point. We'll click play. Okay, so that's the end of that. We will click on this Mark Out button. Now we've selected an in and out, which is about the second half to about the 60% mark. Okay, then we want to bring this audio portion that we've selected down here. So we can click here and move it right there. Now you'll see this portion that I've selected doesn't equal the length of all our footage. So let's say all we wanted was this. In our final edit, we only wanted this part. So what we have to do is trim all of these clips or remove some clips so that our edit is only this long. Now, when we export the videos, we can, just like this, set an in and out and only output this part. But for our purposes, we will move some clips around and clean up the edit. Okay, so let's bring our timeline cursor to the beginning. That changes this back to the program monitor. We have our music in place. Now we want to listen to the music and find points where it would be good to transition to the next clip. So let's play it and I will show you how to search for those. Okay, right where I stopped starts another bar of music. So what we can do is click and drag and select all of these and simply click and hold and drag right to the point here, and then it'll trim this clip. Another way we can do that is, let's go back by pressing Command Z. We can go down to this clip without selecting anything and move the cursor over until we see this symbol. We can click and hold and trim that clip by dragging. Then it makes a blank spot in our edit. We can click and highlight the blank spot and press delete on our keyboard, and then it'll shift all of the other stuff after it over. Now, sometimes that doesn't work if you do have other edits after it or certain audio files after. And in that case, you might have to do our original way, which is click and drag everything and then move it over. Let's listen to this and find our next point after this. So at this point, it's about where the full part of the song starts, and this would be a good point to transition into faster cutting. So what we can do is trim that clip, click there and delete, and then rewatch here. That would be another point. That's a bar of music. So we can click that and drag it all the way to there. And then since now we have an open space, we actually can open that up because we know this point here is when all the music starts up. By selecting nothing, just clicking here, you can press M on your keyboard or this button here, and it'll set a marker right here. So we always know in the edit, this is where that part of the song is. Now, if we wanted, we could also do it on this. We could also do it right here by selecting it and pressing M. Now that exists in there. So if we are moving our music around, then we know that's always where it is. So this is helpful if you need to move some clips around and still maintain where that change in music is. For our purposes, because we aren't going to be moving this audio clip further down the timeline, we can just reference this. Okay, so let's watch this again. Okay, so in my opinion, I think at this point, the edit should start speeding up and the cuts should be a lot more frequent. So what we can do is throughout the edit, we can just make other markers while listening quickly. And this is a very fast way and a great technique in order to find your edit points and make quick edits accordingly. So what we can do is we're going to play the music and tap M every time we want an edit change to happen, and it's going to place a marker, and then we can use those markers as places to move clips to. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the song. Now, I am a drummer, so I find it pretty easy to press M at the right spot. If that doesn't work for you, you can always just nudge the clips over a little bit, select different parts, and move them as you need to try to find the edit points. But if you are able to do that, then this is a really great time saver. So now we have our markers set up. We can zoom in, and without even watching our edit, we can actually, as simple as this, just click this, and you'll see the white spot that shows up right here. That means that this is snapped to place. And the reason it snaps to place is because we have the snap tool enabled right now, and that is enabled by pressing S. So if we press S, it turns it off. And if we press S again, it turns it on. We can also click it on and off. Because the snap tool is on, if we click and drag here, it'll snap to that spot. You can kind of see it snapping to the line here. It also snaps to the marker in here. Okay. So what we can do is, this is the leftover from this clip, so we can delete that. This is our next clip. So what we can do is take this and bring it right there. So it snaps to that. Then now we have this part, so we can either trim it to that part, and it'll snap right in place. And then we just keep doing that until we have all our edit points. So there's that. We'll bring that all the way to there. Click and drag, bring the next one, which is right here. And then we can drag this one. Make sure it's lined up. Drag this one. Okay, and just like I said before, you can select this area, the empty spot, if you have clips after it. Press delete and it'll just bring them all over. So that's also a faster way to do it. Click that. Delete. Click that. Just to make sure. Delete. And there's our last one. Now we don't have enough clips right now to fill the rest of the song. So what we can do instead is we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 clips that are shorter, and then we'll have these ones a little longer. So what we can do is, let's make this one 2 markers long, and we'll do this one as well, 2 markers long, 2 markers long, 2 markers long, 2 markers long, and our last one to the end. Okay, so now that we've filled our edit and our edit points match our markers, I can tell you without even watching it that this will look pretty good because we've picked the best parts of the clips and we've edited them to markers without even watching it. Now, the only thing that we can change is the clip order, and that obviously depends on watching it and making creative decisions. So for our purposes, this is fine. So let's have a look at this. We'll watch it from right here. Okay, so pretty good. And that was a very quick edit and that was editing to music instead of visually editing. And I should note that we aren't working with interview footage or anything with dialogue, so this is just a straight kind of montage using some fall footage that I shot, edited to some music I created in Pro Tools.